Hello, my name is Maria Jelliker. Welcome to my show, Let's Talk About History. Today I have a special guest. His name is Dayne Rugh. He's an author, historian, and he is the director of the Memorial Slater Museum located at NFA. Thank you for joining me today, Dayne.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
Okay. I'd like to know about being a director at Slater Museum. Can you tell me and the viewers about Slater Museum? Some interesting ideas about Slater Museum?
It's the best job I think I'll ever have. It really is a wonderful place to be. You know, NFA is one of only 2 high schools in America to have to feature a museum on their campus that's accessible to the students as well as the public. And that alone makes the environment so special. We have a global collection of artwork from all over the world. And as the curator and director of the museum, it's my responsibility to ensure that our permanent collection is well taken care of and that we can preserve and interpret the history that we have in a way that's meaningful and relevant to students and to the public. And with objects that come literally from all over the world, there's something to learn every single day. And I still learn new things when I'm on the job. So it's a great job for me because I really love learning. I liked being in a school environment, and the museum is like a giant classroom for me. My background is museum education and object interpretation, and so I really thrive in that setting. It's a great place to work for anybody that loves learning.
What are a couple of the oldest objects that you have there at the Slater Museum, and where did they come from?
That's a great question. I would say the oldest thing that we have in the collection is a mummified forearm, and it was on display for a long time. It's not currently on display as of this very moment. But that's thousands of years old. It's very hard to date it exactly, but
Where
that's
did it
probably.
come from?
It came from a private collection. Yeah, and most.
But originally, a mummy from Egypt, or?
That's our understanding. Yeah.
All right, do you have any events coming up at the Slater Museum?
We do. We have a regular schedule right now of lectures and movies and programs. So if you're looking to attend any of them, we update our website pretty regularly. So you can just visit the website to see what's coming up soon.
Great. All right. So what days and hours are people able to just walk in and visit, and do they have to pay to come in, or?
We're open every day except Sunday and Tuesday, so you can visit every day from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and those are the public hours. So if you're visiting from outside NFA, you're able to come and visit. Alumni of NFA always visit for free. And if you happen to be a tourist or you're visiting the area, there's a $10 admission, but there's a discounted admission available too for senior citizens and active military and all that.
Okay. And you can join, have membership there, right?
You can.
Yearly?
Yes, you can. Yep, absolutely. So if you want to come all the time, that's probably a good option for you.
You save some money that way.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I gotta take my glasses off. These bifocals don't always help you read close up.
Yes.
You authored a new book, John Durkee, The Forgotten Story of Connecticut's Bold Man from Bean Hill.
Yes.
I think, there's a photo of it right there. Can we talk a little bit about John Durkee and why you feel that he was an outstanding character to write about? And can I say, this painting of him is in the Leffingwell Inn. If you go visit the Leffingwell Inn, the original painting is there.
That's correct.
And that dates to?
That was done a few years ago. The painting was unveiled in 2021 on July 4th. It was done by a Durkee family descendant, Susan Boone Durkee. She lives in Connecticut and is as you can see, a very accomplished portrait artist. But she unveiled that to everybody on July 4th of 2021.
Okay. Can you talk about John Durkee and why you felt he was during the Revolutionary War? He was a soldier.
Yes.
Can you talk about him?
Absolutely. John Durkee is kind of a folk hero of mine in many ways. And what really drew me to him is that about 10 years ago now, a little over 10 years ago, is when I first joined the board of the Leffingwell House Museum. And I spent a decade on that board. Around the year 2015, we were brainstorming to figure out a program to do for July 4th. And everyone was really wanting to stir up more attention about the 4th of July and American history, as well as how it relates to local history in Norwich. So I was tasked with figuring out a program for July 4th that we could do. And I had just watched a series on the History Channel called The Sons of Liberty. And it was like a mini-series. It was a 2 or 3 part mini-series about the Sons of Liberty. And it was a subject I was pretty interested in. And I wanted to learn a lot more about the organization and the people that were involved. So I start doing some research on the internet, and come to find out, I come across this name, John Durkee of Norwich. And I get really, really interested in this name that I'd never seen before. And I thought, well, what's his relation to the Sons of Liberty? Was he active in the organization? Well, it turns out he was. And it turns out he was more than that. He was a leader within the local Sons of Liberty chapter that was established here in eastern Connecticut around Norwich. So that was really a big spark for me. And it wasn't too long after that I revisited a book called History of Norwich, Connecticut, written by Frances Calkins. She wrote the first edition around 1845 and then republished it in 1866. So I go to that 1866 copy, and sure enough, I see John Durkee in the index. And I go to the page where she wrote about him. She wrote one page on John Durkee, and she described him with this sentence. She said, "Could the life of this able and valiant soldier be written in detail, it would form a work of uncommon interest."
Oh, so that was just talking to you.
You know, it was hard to not see that as almost like a challenge. It's almost as if Frances Calkins wrote that specifically saying that this man is very interesting, his life is very interesting, and if someone wrote something on him, it might find an appreciative audience.
Yeah, she definitely wanted his story to be told.
I believe
so. Finally, it's in a book.
Yes,
you authored.
Yes,
and that's wonderful.
And that's really
you were just meant
idea.
to, write this book about John Durkee. Now, what rank was he in the Revolutionary War?
He achieved the rank of colonel by the time he finished his active service.
Oh, wow.
And he was a military man even before the American Revolution. He was an officer in the French and Indian War, and achieved the rank of major in leading the Connecticut Provincials by the time of the end of the French and Indian War. So he already had prior military experience and leadership experience going into the Rev War.
Who is the Sons of Liberty? What group was that exactly? When were they established?
So this is a secret organization of folks. And
does it still exist today?
No, not real.
Okay.
Not in its form that you would see back then. The Sons of Liberty formed originally in Boston, and this was a direct result of the Stamp Act crisis in 1765. This group of individuals who come from all different backgrounds had formed this group known as the Sons of Liberty in Boston as a form of resistance to the Stamp Act that was passed. And ultimately, Sons of Liberty offshoots and chapters begin to pop up in the other colonies, and that was the same for Connecticut. So we like to refer to Eastern Connecticut really as the hotbed of revolutionary activity in Norwich. This is where, in Connecticut. This was the region where a lot of those meetings and correspondence and happenings were going on as it related to the Sons of Liberty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's. What year was he born? Was he born in Norwich?
He was born in Windham in 1728. So he's a lot older than some of the other figures we're familiar with in the Revolutionary War. He was 4 years older than George Washington, and many other famous commanders. So he's kind of the older guy in the.
Did he correspond with General George Washington?
He did. Yes, he did.
And can you give me a little story about?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Washington communicated very regularly with his commanders, with his officers, and one of the nice things about Washington is he saved all of his correspondence, at least all of it that he was able to do. And so there are thousands and thousands and thousands of letters that Washington wrote throughout the course of his life and the life in the war. There's a few letters exchanged between John Durkee and Washington that do survive.
Where are they now? They're in a museum
They're all part of the Washington Papers collection. This is all
in Washington D.C.
Yeah,
good.
they're all cataloged, which is very nice.
So they're taken care of. That's important.
Yes.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, it's nice that you're able to even see transcriptions of a lot of these letters online, which makes it very helpful to do.
Was John Durkee, Colonel John Durkee, was he liked by George Washington, General George Washington?
I think so. There's not enough correspondence that really gives me a lot of insight on Washington's opinion of John Durkee. But John Durkee, you can see from a lot of other tangential correspondence that he had a great respect for Washington. He wanted to do right by the general. He was an incredibly loyal and an integral part of the Continental Army, and his character certainly speaks to that.
Okay. Why is John Durkee's story important to Connecticut and America?
Well, to me, it's important because he's an unsung hero. He's a name that does not appear in mainstream history books. And it's not that he's a totally unknown person. He does appear in other publications that are very obscure, that are very dated. So it's hard to find. It's hard to find a lot of these resources that do mention John Durkee. But what really drew me to him and his importance is that there was really quite a lot of attention put on him by his colleagues and his peers. And he earned a very reputable nickname known as the Bold Man from Bean Hill. Or the Bold Bean Hiller. That's another variant that I have found of him. And it makes you wonder, what does someone do throughout the course of their life to really earn a nickname like that goes down in history? So that was just a really, really, really interesting way of getting into the mind of this guy, to seeing what he did.
Why do you think he got that name? I mean, he lived in Bean Hill?
He lived in Bean Hill, yes.
In Norwich.
In Norwich, which is not too far from this studio, actually. As I was researching through...
Is his original house still there?
No, I wish it was. It's probably been gone for a long time now. But as I was researching through the land records in the city, I was able to triangulate the location of where his dwelling house would have been. And he owned a lot of property throughout Norwich. So he had property in Bean Hill. He had property on modern-day Town Street in Norwich. So he had a lot of different properties and farmland parcels.
And he was born in Norwich?
No, he was born in Windham. I apologize.
Windham.
Yeah, he was born in Windham, came to Norwich probably around 18, 19 years old.
Wow. Okay. As this is your first book, what did you learn while writing it, and what was the most difficult thing about the... I'd like to mention also that this book was #1 for the category of history books on Amazon.
That was a big surprise to me. Yes, I wrote this book without really too many expectations. I wrote it because I wanted to. And I
And
really
it reached #1.
and for the last half of December, it reached #1, the #1 new release in U.S. colonial period history on Amazon. So that was a really nice, rewarding thing to see.
Yes, definitely.
And I would say the most what I learned about writing this book was there is so much history to be told from the perspectives of guys like John Durkee. We know so much about people like George Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, Ben Franklin. The list goes on and on. But what we really don't know a lot about from a mainstream perspective is what did the people really on the front lines do? Because John Durkee was a field commander, and he was just a regular, everyday person. There wasn't anything extraordinary about his background from a traditional sense, but he was able to earn a reputation as a highly respected person amongst his peers and amongst the people that he served with. And over the course of many months and years of researching, I come across firsthand accounts of people that knew John Durkee that say so many wonderful, glowing things about him and his leadership capabilities. So that, again, is such a testament to the extraordinary life that he lived. And that was incredible to really see for me over the course of writing the book. I would say the toughest thing about writing it is John Durkee served in a number of engagements, and there are entire books out there written on just some of those battles. So I really had to focus the narrative as much as I could and not get too far off into related or unrelated tangents. And that's sometimes hard for me to do because you really want to talk about everything and unpack everything as much as possible, but I needed to keep the narrative focused as a biography on his life.
Yeah.
So that was probably the most difficult thing, and especially as I've never done this before. This is my first book, so I'm learning all about it.
And in the book, you talk about places that he went. Yeah. Was he rich? Was he wealthy, or was he a farmer?
Far from rich, I can tell you that. He was a landowner. You know, he owned property.
He was more of a farmer.
They maintained farmland and orchards all throughout this area.
And he must have been a likable person.
I think so. He seemed to have an affable personality, but he was far from wealthy. I'll tell you that. When he died, he died virtually insolvent, unfortunately.
Yeah. There's a link, and I think it's about Norwich. It's thekeystohistory.com that the viewers, if they would like to Google that, it's thekeystohistory.com.
Yep, so that's,
and it describes the book.
It does, yep.
And it's a beautiful website.
Thank you.
Because it has the book and it talks about John Durkee, and I'd like to mention also that Dayne is an SAR member.
I am, yes I am.
And that's how you got involved, I think, also in, the Sons of the American Revolution and participating in local events, the Leffingwell Inn, and...
Oh yes, and this year in particular, we're going to be doing a lot of commemoration events that mark the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
John Durkee played a very big role at the Battle of Bunker Hill, as well as some earlier engagements in the war. So this is going to be a time where a lot of folks are focusing on the American Revolution. We're going to be seeing more books and more scholarship on it.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. A good time for all of us.
So, are there any events coming up at the Leffingwell Inn that you can talk about?
Well, they'll be opening later in the season. I'm not on the board anymore, so but they will be launching a full lineup of events, and they keep their website updated.
They usually open in. When will they reopen?
Later in April. Later in April, yep.
Yeah. They usually close in the winter, so... Okay. All right. Well, good luck, Dayne, with your book.
Thank you.
Is there, if anyone is interested in getting the book, do they go to Amazon, or is there a website?
They can, or they can see the website keystohistory.com, where they can learn more about the book. So you can see it in either location. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dayne, so much.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
For joining me today.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy my show. Thank you.